What if a single act of kindness could spark a transformation? On a bustling city street, Hollywood legend Clint Eastwood encountered a man society had overlooked. Their eyes met, and in that instant, a flicker of understanding ignited like a lone star in the night sky. As Clint paused to listen, he heard a story that challenged his perceptions and touched his heart. What unfolded next left onlookers in tears and ignited a nationwide conversation about compassion. Prepare to witness an unexpected connection that would ripple far beyond that street corner, revealing the profound power of human connection when we least expect it. The bustling streets of Cleveland fell quiet as Clint Eastwood paused, his gaze fixed on a figure huddled against a weathered brick building. The world around him seemed to fade, leaving only the stark contrast between their lives, two parallel tracks suddenly converging. Clint wrestled with a decision that would challenge everything he thought he knew about compassion. Passers-by slowed, phones raised to capture this unexpected scene. The Hollywood icon and the forgotten citizen, separated by circumstance yet connected by shared humanity. Clint's internal struggle mirrored society's broader dilemma: to engage or look away, to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth or pretend it didn't exist. With a deep breath, Clint stepped forward. The homeless man's eyes, wary and guarded, followed his approach. Years of being overlooked had taught him to expect nothing from strangers, let alone someone of Clint's stature. As Clint drew closer, the man's calloused hands tightened their grip on his cardboard sign. Clint knelt down, bridging the divide between their worlds. "Mind if I sit with you for a bit?" he asked, his voice gruff but gentle. The man nodded, surprise and suspicion playing across his weathered features. As Clint settled in, the city's rhythm faded to a distant hum. "What's your name?" Clint asked, his eyes filled with genuine interest. "Tom," he replied, his voice rough from disuse. "Tom Johnson." As Tom began to speak, his initial wariness gave way to a hesitant openness. Words tumbled out, halting at first, then gaining momentum like a long-dammed river breaking free. He spoke of a life that once held promise, a job in manufacturing, a small apartment, dreams of starting a family. But then came layoffs, an injury that left him unable to find new work, and a spiral of misfortune that led him to this cold corner of Cleveland's streets. Clint listened, really listened, in a way Tom couldn't remember anyone doing in years. As the story unfolded, Clint found himself seeing the city through new eyes. The gleaming skyscrapers took on a different hue when contrasted with the harsh realities of life on the streets. He thought of the characters he'd portrayed, tough guys who always found a way out of impossible situations. But here, in the real world, the solutions weren't as simple as a well-timed punch or a clever quip. A small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, their curiosity piqued by this unusual scene. For Clint, their presence faded as he focused on the man before him, seeing not just a homeless individual, but a fellow human being with a complex history and untold depths. The conversation meandered, touching on Tom's past dreams, his daily struggles, and the small kindnesses that sometimes made life bearable. Clint found himself sharing, too, stories from his own life, moments of hardship he'd faced before fame found him, the perspective that comes with age and experience. As they talked, something shifted in the air around them. The initial awkwardness melted away, replaced by a genuine connection that transcended their vastly different circumstances. Clint's face, usually guarded and stoic, softened with empathy. Tom's eyes, long dulled by hardship, sparked with a glimmer of something that looked almost like hope. In choosing to stop, to engage, to listen, Clint had taken the first step on a journey that would challenge his understanding of compassion. He realized that true strength wasn't always about toughness or resilience. Sometimes it was about vulnerability, about opening oneself up to the pain and struggles of others. As their conversation drew to a close, Clint felt a surge of determination. He couldn't solve all of Tom's problems, couldn't undo years of hardship with a single conversation, but he could do something. The seed of an idea began to form in his mind, a way to make a tangible difference in Tom's life. As the seed of an idea took root in Clint's mind, Tom's story began to unfold like a tattered map, each crease and tear revealing a journey no one could have predicted. The famous actor leaned in, his weathered face etched with concern, ready to hear the tale that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life on the streets. Tom's voice, rough from disuse, quivered as he began. "It wasn't always like this," he said, gesturing to the worn cardboard sign at his feet. "I had a life, a good one." Clint nodded, encouraging him to continue. The bustling city seemed to fade away, leaving only two men and a story that would change them both forever. I was a foreman at a construction company for 15 years, Tom continued, his eyes focusing on a point in the distance. Thought I'd retire there, maybe even pass the job down to my son someday. But then the economy took a nosedive. Projects dried up and suddenly I was just another guy with a pink slip in his hand. As Tom spoke, Clint found himself transported to a world he'd never known. He could almost smell the sawdust and hear the rhythmic pounding of hammers that had once been the soundtrack to Tom's life. The actor's famous squint deepened, his eyes never leaving Tom's face. I thought I'd bounce back, but weeks turned into months and the bills, they just kept coming. Tom's voice cracked and he paused, swallowing hard. The small crowd that had gathered around them held their breath, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Clint, too, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Tom continued, his words gaining strength. Then my wife got sick, cancer, the kind that eats up savings and hope in equal measure. He looked up, meeting Clint's gaze for the first time. We fought it together, but in the end I lost her and everything else. The raw pain in Tom's eyes hit Clint like a physical blow. He'd played tough guys on screen, men who could take any punch, but this was real suffering. After that, it was like dominoes falling. No job, no savings, medical bills piling up. My daughter took in my son, but there was no room for me. And just like that, I was out here. Clint's mind raced, trying to process the series of events that could take a man from a stable life to the streets. It wasn't the story of laziness or poor choices he'd sometimes assumed about the homeless. This was a man who'd been knocked down by life again and again. How long have you been out here? Clint asked, dreading the answer. 2 years next month, Tom replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The city noise began to filter back in, a jarring reminder of the world that had moved on while Tom's life stood still. Clint felt a surge of emotions, anger at a system that could let this happen, sadness for the life Tom had lost, and an overwhelming urge to do something, anything, to help. What keeps you going? Clint asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Tom was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the people passing by, most averting their eyes from the scene unfolding on the sidewalk. Hope, I guess, he finally said. Hope that someday things might change, that I might see my son again, maybe even hold down a job. It's not much, but it's all I've got left. In that moment, Clint realized he wasn't just listening to a tale of hardship. He was witnessing the resilience of the human spirit, a man who'd lost everything but still clung to the possibility of a better tomorrow. The famous actor felt something shift inside him. He'd come to Cleveland to film a movie, to tell a story. But the real story, the one that truly mattered, was unfolding right here on this city sidewalk. The weight of Tom's story hung in the air, pressing down on everyone present. Clint Eastwood, accustomed to Hollywood's bright lights, found himself in an entirely different spotlight. His usually steady hands trembled slightly, betraying the emotional turmoil within. As Tom's words faded, silence blanketed the sidewalk. The small crowd held their breath, eyes darting between the Hollywood legend and the man whose life had unraveled before them. The gap between their worlds seemed both vast and infinitesimally small. Clint's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what he'd heard. How could he, a man who had everything, make a meaningful difference to someone who had lost it all? The weight of his success felt like a physical burden, as tangible as the expectations of the onlookers. For the first time, Clint noticed a change in Tom's posture. The man who had been hunched under his circumstances now sat a little straighter, his eyes holding a flicker of something new. Was it hope? The realization hit Clint. His attention alone had sparked this change. The actor's internal monologue raced. A quick handout would be easy, expected even. But would it truly help? Clint had always prided himself on digging deeper, on unders, tending the heart of a story. This moment was no different. As seconds ticked by, the air grew thick with anticipation. It was a scene more intense than any Clint had filmed, with stakes far higher than box office numbers or critical acclaim. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, a conversation with the director years ago about the power of storytelling to change lives. In that instant, everything clicked into place. Clint's jaw set with determination as he reached a decision. His fame, his connections, his platform, these were tools to make a real difference. Something shifted in the air between Clint and Tom. An unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition that this chance encounter could be the start of something transformative. For Tom, it was an unexpected lifeline. For Clint, It was a call to action he couldn't ignore. The crowd swelled, drawn by the electric atmosphere. Phones appeared, cameras trained on the unfolding scene. But Clint's focus remained on Tom, on the man whose story had cracked open his worldview. In that moment, Clint saw beyond Tom to the countless others like him, people with stories, with potential, who had been cast aside. He thought of the film he was in Cleveland to make, and how hollow its message would ring if he walked away from this real-life drama. With a deep breath, Clint made his choice. This wasn't about a single grand gesture. It was about committing to real, lasting change. He would use his voice, his influence, to shine a light on the issues Tom faced. But more than that, he would roll up his sleeves and get involved in finding solutions. As Clint opened his mouth to speak, he felt the weight of the moment. Whatever he said next would set in motion a chain of events that would ripple far beyond this sidewalk. This wasn't about his image or legacy. It was about doing what was right, about being the kind of man he had always aspired to portray on screen. Clint's eyes narrowed with purpose as he pulled out his phone, fingers moving with unexpected urgency. The homeless man watched, confusion etching deeper lines into his weathered face as Clint made a series of rapid-fire calls. The once bustling street seemed to hold its breath, the usual cacophony of city life fading to a distant hum. "Yes, immediately," Clint's voice carried, firm yet tinged with gentleness. "I need it done today." Tom's gaze darted between Clint and the growing crowd, his body tense. Years on the streets had taught him to be wary of attention, but something in Clint's demeanor kept him rooted to the spot. For the first time in years, Tom felt seen, not as a problem to be solved, but as a person worthy of care. As Clint ended his last call, he turned to Tom, his expression softening. "Tom," he said, voice low, "I know trust doesn't come easy, but I'm asking you to take a chance here." Tom's brow furrowed, hope warring with years of learned skepticism. "What kind of chance are we talking about, Mr. Eastwood?" "A chance at a new beginning," Clint said simply. "If you're willing to take it." The crowd murmured, phones raised to capture the unfolding scene. In that moment, the line between celebrity and ordinary citizen blurred, replaced by a shared humanity that transcended fame and fortune. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Clint helped Tom to his feet, supporting him with a steadiness that belied his years. As they approached the car, Tom hesitated. I don't understand," Tom stammered, voice thick with emotion. "Why are you doing this?" Clint's reply was quiet but firm. "Because sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you. Today, that person is me." As Tom opened the car door, it was clear that Clint's gift was more than material. It was a lifeline, a chance to rewrite a story that had seemed destined for tragedy. Inside the car, Clint explained his plan. He'd made calls to local shelters, job training programs, and contacts in the construction industry, setting in motion a chain of events that could provide Tom with not just immediate relief, but a sustainable path forward. "It won't be easy," Clint cautioned. "There's a lot of work ahead, but you won't be doing it alone." Tom nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I don't know how to thank you." Clint shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me by taking this opportunity and running with it. Show the world what you're capable of when given a fair shot." As the car pulled away, the crowd dispersed, but the energy had shifted. Conversations buzzed with a new awareness, a reminder of the power of compassion and the potential for change in every interaction. For Clint, this moment was more than just a good deed. It was a challenge to himself and others in positions of influence, a reminder that true strength lay not in characters portrayed on screen, but in real-life choices to extend a hand to those in need. As the city skyline receded, Tom's gaze remained fixed on the road ahead. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a future beyond the next meal or safe place to sleep. It was a fragile hope, but it was there, a spark that could ignite a whole new chapter of his life. The black car glided through Cleveland's streets, its tinted windows shielding Tom from curious glances. Inside, Tom's eyes darted nervously, his weathered hands fidgeting with his frayed sleeve. The city he once knew so well now felt alien, a landscape of possibility and uncertainty stretching before him. Clint sat beside Tom, his presence a steady anchor. As they approached a nondescript building, Tom's heart raced. The car stopped, and Clint turned to Tom with a reassuring nod. "This is it," he said softly. "Are you ready?" Tom swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. I think so." They stepped inside, greeted by bright lights and a team of professionals. Their faces held a mix of compassion and purpose. Dr. Ramirez stepped forward, her smile warm and welcoming. "Mr. Johnson, we're here to help you get back on your feet." Tom's face cycled through emotions, disbelief, fear, and finally a fragile hope. He turned to Clint, seeking reassurance. Clint nodded, his voice steady. "This is real, Tom. It's time to start your new chapter." A flurry of activity followed. A medical check revealed years of neglect, but nothing insurmountable. Clean clothes awaited Tom, each fold a promise of renewal. As he changed, something shifted in his demeanor. The clink of utensils against a plate broke the silence as a hot meal was served. Tom's hands trembled as he savored each bite. Clint watched, his own meal untouched, as color returned to Tom's cheeks. Questions about Tom's future revealed the depth of Clint's commitment. A job training program tailored to Tom's background in construction. A small, clean apartment being prepared. "But why?" Tom asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Why go to all this trouble for someone like me?" Clint leaned forward, his eyes meeting Tom's. "Because everyone deserves a second chance, Tom. Sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you." As the day waned, Tom stood before a full-length mirror. The man staring back was a stranger. Gone was the matted beard, replaced by smooth skin. Freshly cut hair framed a face that looked years younger. But his eyes held the most striking change. A spark of hope, long extinguished, now flickered to life. Tom's mind raced. It was as if he'd stepped through a portal, emerging on the other side as the man he used to be. The weight of years on the streets seemed to lift from his shoulders, leaving him standing taller than he had in decades. "What do you see, Tom?" Clint asked softly. Tom's voice wavered. "I see me. The me I thought was gone forever." Clint nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "That's right. He's always been there. Now it's time to let him out again." As they prepared to leave, Tom turned to Clint, eyes brimming. "I don't know how to thank you," he began, but Clint stopped him. "Don't thank me, Tom. This is just the beginning. The real work starts tomorrow. Remember this moment. Remember how it feels to stand tall again, to see possibility. That's the gift you're giving yourself. My part was just opening the door." As the sun rose over Cleveland, a story was racing across social media. Clint Eastwood, the Hollywood icon, had done something unexpected. His encounter with Tom, a homeless man, was spreading like wildfire. Within hours, #ClintCares was trending nationwide. "This is what real heroes do," one viral post declared. Another user tweeted, "Clint Eastwood just showed us all how to be human." The mix of awe, skepticism, and hope set the tone for what was to come. For many, it was a beacon of light in an often dark world. The story sparked a larger conversation, challenging celebrities and public figures. Social media users began tagging their favorite stars, asking what they were doing to help the homeless in their cities. In Cleveland, the impact was immediate. Local shelters reported a surge in volunteers and donations. Maria Gonzalez, director of a downtown shelter, said, "We've never seen anything like this. Our phone's been ringing off the hook. It's like the whole city woke up overnight." As the story grew, so did its complexity. Tom, now settled in his new apartment, grappled with unexpected attention. "I'm grateful, I really am," he said to local press. "But I'm just trying to get my life back on track. I didn't ask to be a symbol of nothing." His words highlighted a debate about charity and social change. Dr. Anita Patel, a sociologist, said, "It's wonderful what Mr. Eastwood did, but we can't rely on celebrity interventions to solve homelessness. We need policy changes, affordable housing initiatives, and better mental health support." Clint found himself at a crossroads. His publicist, Janet Moore, released a statement. "Mr. Eastwood is touched by the response. He hopes his actions will inspire others to see the humanity in those often overlooked in our society." Behind closed doors, Clint wrestled with a bigger question. How could he leverage this moment to create lasting impact? He considered a more active role in social advocacy. The conversation shifted in boardrooms and city halls. Mayor Sarah Thompson observed, "We're seeing a ripple effect. People are demanding action, not just talk. It's forcing us to reevaluate our priorities and policies." As days passed, it became clear that Clint's true gift was to society's conscience. He had held up a mirror, forcing people to confront their attitudes towards those living on the margins. Pressure mounted on other celebrities. Some responded with photo ops at shelters. Others pledged donations or announced initiatives. But the public wanted genuine engagement, like Clint had demonstrated. Clint's act had sparked a nationwide reflection on compassion and social responsibility. It wasn't just about one man helping another. It was about rediscovering our shared humanity and the power of individual action to inspire collective change. As the sun dipped below Cleveland's skyline, Clint Eastwood's act of compassion rippled far beyond the city streets. His unexpected encounter with Tom had ignited a spark, challenging viewers to see the power of human connection in a world often too busy to notice. Social media buzzed with stories of everyday heroes inspired by Clint's gesture. Local shelters reported a surge in volunteers, their phones ringing off the hook. As this real-life drama unfolded, a question lingered. What if your simple act could spark change? The story of Clint and Tom reminded us that profound transformations often begin with a moment of truly seeing another human being. In a world craving connection, what will you do today to make a difference?